Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to EF's second demo day in San Francisco. Thank you for coming to join us on such a warm day. We actually got in emergency ice creams yesterday when we realized it was going to be 32 degrees C. Oh, no, we're in California. I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit. A hot day. So there will be ice creams later to celebrate getting through the pitches. We're going to kick off with a Fireside chat with Patrick, who really needs no introduction. Patrick is both CEO and co-founder of Stripe, but also an investor in Entrepreneur First, and we're super grateful for your support and time. Patrick, let's talk a little bit about talent investing. So what we do at EF, we call talent investing, this idea that you can find individuals at the very beginning of their career, often before their founding journey, and work with them to get to the point where they're going to be a founder. Why don't we go to the beginning of your founding journey? So you grew up in Ireland. When did you realize you even could be a founder, that founding was a thing?
Oh, well, that was very easy in my case. I was very lucky because both my parents started businesses. And when I was born, Ireland was still a very traditional kind of Catholic place. And when I was the first of my mom's parents to be born, and she was working for this other firm, I won't name them, and when I was born, they sent her a letter congratulating her on her new birth and basically wishing her all the best in the rest of her life. And I knew this was not a bad employer. This was not kind of abnormal. So anyway, she no longer worked at that company, after a few weeks of me, she realized, well, this is pretty boring. I was not very engaging, and nothing has since changed. But she said, well, I got to do something. And so she decided to start. All these American companies were setting up in Ireland, these multinationals, and she decided to do quality management training, ISO 9000 and 9002 and all this kind of stuff, which was kind of funny growing up because John and I thought this was completely fake stuff. It's just like, what even is all this quality management? But now, of course, at Stripe, we take it very seriously. So anyway, that's what my mom did. And she was running this business all through our childhood. And now sometimes she says, wow, Stripe is so big or whatever. But we, of course, reassure her that, well, her business has always been profitable. Big difference. And then our dad, he was working for one of these American multinationals. He was working for Dell. And doing very nicely there. He was actually a quality manager, which is how they met. But then he inexplicably went and bought a little lakeside hotel in Ireland, a small little hotel, very idyllic. And that was also very educational, and particularly taught me and John to never go into the hotel business. So anyway, but we had these two examples. So like this sounds like a kind of made up story, but when John and I were playing in the garden when we were 3 or 5 or 7 or something, we used to play at starting a company, because that's what our parents did. If your parents are firemen, you play as a fireman or whatever, and they started companies, and so that's we just thought it was the natural thing to do.
That's amazing, and what an incredible start to even considering that this might be a possible career path. We still see that, particularly in Europe, and the companies you're going to see today are founders who have all come from Europe. The status quo of what to do with your career and your life still looms large. And for us, it's still our biggest competitor, is trying to get people out of these very traditional jobs.
Totally, and I think you can read sort of our circumstances kind of the opposite way, which is, had our parents not done that, I think there's an excellent chance that we wouldn't have. And I was, I think, of kids in Limerick, I think I was probably more willing to take risks than most of them, and I ended up going to college, or coming to college here in the US. But even still, like in the US, among the more entrepreneurial dynamic, whatever, I remember, when we decided to start our first company, people thought it was a pretty, discreditable thing to do. And so, yeah, I think like there are many of me and John and others, I think, who didn't have that accidental exposure through life circumstances, and probably didn't think of starting a company, and are now working at. I was going to name a boring company, but they also partner with Stripe, so I won't name them. But who didn't end up starting a company.
Well, one of the ways that we tackle this at EF is we find the individual, and all we care about is the person. So when we first start putting money into the entity. It's actually just a person. We want to fund them to work on whatever they think is interesting. And this is actually similar to what you do at the ARC Institute, right? Talk to us a little bit about how you think about this. I mean, we call it talent investing, but I think what the ARC Institute does is similar, that you put money in the person to be obsessive and interested and curious about whatever they want.
Yeah, okay, so you guys probably, has anyone heard of the ARC Institute? Oh, wow, that's more than I expected. Okay, so, but it's a tiny minority. So just very quickly, the ARC Institute is a thing I set up, three of us set up. I'm other Patrick, Patrick Sue, this scientist, and then my wife, who's also a scientist. And we set it up 3 years ago. It's a basic biomedical research organization. And so it's an actual place. It employs today around 150 scientists. And it's all basic biology. It's a nonprofit. It studies it studies whatever captures the interests of the scientists. But the basic difference between it and every other major research institution, in particular between all the universities, is, and there's a lot of great universities here in the US. The big difference is that even though there's a tremendously vibrant research landscape, and you have MIT and Stanford and Harvard and Berkeley and all the rest, they all have this kind of really strong commonality beneath the surface, which is they pursue project-based funding. And so, if you work in one of these places, you're funded almost certainly predominantly by the NIH, maybe some from the NSF, these other kind of major funding bodies. And the NIH funds projects. And not only does it fund projects, but there's a very kind of explicit, kind of mechanical, tightly prescribed decision-making process that is explicitly committee-oriented. They call them study sections. Explicitly consensus-oriented, and has all the sort of second-order consequences that you'd expect such a mechanism to have. And on the one hand, I think the returns from discoveries in biomedicine can obviously be really huge. But imagine if in tech there was only one VC firm and it was run by the government, maybe that'd be like one good actor in an ecosystem, but it'd be kind of pretty worrying if that was like the only thing. So anyway, we thought it'd be nice to, and again, there's surprisingly few other kind of alternatives to that overall system. Like maybe some people donate a bit to universities, but there isn't really an alternative to the university model. Again, if you want to pursue basic biology research. So anyway, that was kind of the idea behind ARC. Again, started out 3 years ago. Just to tie it to your question, yeah, ARC chooses investigators. They're hired for renewable 8-year terms. But within those 8 years, they're guaranteed funding, and they can do whatever they want. And if they say, I want to study the, diurnal patterns of the common garden newt, well, that's what they're doing. And we're funding them for 8 years. We ran this survey. This is I think should scare all of you. We ran this survey before starting ARC where we polled top biology researchers. And so these are people who've devoted decades of their lives to kind of learning what's required to sort of get into this position of preeminence. They've been hired by the top universities and all the rest. And we asked them, people always talk about should there be more funding in science or not. We asked them not if you had more money, but if you could spend your current dollars however you want, you had flexibility in terms of the spending of your current dollars, how much would your research agenda change? And 79%, so 4 out of 5, told us their research agenda would change a lot. So 80% of top biomedical researchers are not studying what they would like to do. They are somehow being constrained and kind of redirected by these systemic strictures. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity in enabling specific individual people to act with agency.
Well, we see something similar at EF where we have this internal meme that everyone has to get their first bad idea out of their system. And we select these incredibly talented, skilled individuals. And then their first idea, I would reliably say, and I'm looking at the EF team in the front row, sucks. But they need to get it out of their system, get it out of the way, and they go, oh, actually, the thing I've always cared about, can I work on the thing I've always cared about? And it's like, yes, you can. But I think particularly within startups, often, if you read enough of the startup press, you feel like you have to behave and build a startup idea in a certain way, rather than truly investigating, what do I care about? What's the change I want to make in the world?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly had, a variety of bad ideas before Stripe, so resonates.
So we're always very interested in what does an exceptional founder look like? We do make investment decisions, we do invest in the companies that are produced, but actually the first most important decision we're making is who gets onto the program, who do we select? We've been refining our thesis on talent over the last couple of years. Do you have a thesis on what makes a good founder?
Someone who successfully deploys founder mode. Gosh, well, I mean, you guys are now the experts. We've only tried two. How do I say? I don't think it's. I mean, look, some things are clearly somewhat kind of personality. I don't know. Deeply intertwined with one's innate personality. Like probably people have somewhat innate levels of, I don't know, determination or willingness to endure. It's not so much hardship. I always find it funny when people are talking about the hardship of starting a company. It's like you're rarely going hungry, so it's the scheme of things is not hardship, but I don't know, just sort of emotional pummeling or something. But so maybe there are some things like that that are innate. But I'm very struck by how if you look at if you take Europe and the US, so Mario Draghi recently authored this report in Europe. He's the former prime minister of Italy and former central banker, and he wrote this report on kind of the competitiveness of the EU, and he described how, among other things, 0 of the top 50 companies in Europe today were founded in the last 50 years. And you don't have to be sort of a scholar of the dynamics of international dynamism, to think that doesn't sound great. In the US, I don't know what the exact count is, but it must be like more than half of the top 10, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so Europe is doing this pretty poorly today. But obviously, you look at that and it's like, well, the sort of the shape of the human capital distribution in the US versus Europe, like it's not that different, right? And so anyway, I think it kind of goes to show how it's perhaps less about the kind of the characteristics of the people and more the sociology that they're surrounded with and get exposed to. And I think to a large extent, I was not scripted with anything here, but I think to some extent that's kind of the entrepreneur's first like arbitrage opportunity, where there are few talent pools as finely poured over as as Silicon Valley. And if you're sort of a Stanford student and you mutter the words startup, you have sort of a little cluster of angel investors, dangling checks in front of you. But you can be in Europe and you kind of built something over many years that just is generating 50 million a year of cash flow or something, and no one will ever have called you. And so anyway, I think obviously you guys are in more than Europe, but just with direct experience and exposure to Europe myself, I think there's a really significant arbitrage opportunity there.
Yeah, well, thank you. So we are now bringing European founders to the Bay Area. It's interesting giving advice to European founders.
And by the way, sorry, just can I interrupt you for a
second?
Yeah, of course. So one thing that's interesting in my little sector is in fintech, like so many of the best companies are European, and so like it can work. And so Revolut, which obviously a hugely successful neobank, is European. there's a very vibrant fintech ecosystem broadly. There's a whole bunch of payments companies that got started in Europe. Stripe is kind of an Irish-American company, but we have a big operation in Europe. But there are a lot of kind of pure European ones. I mean, Adyen gets a bunch of attention, but there's Mali, and there's Checkout, there's others. Again, I'm not an expert in lots of parts of tech, but say within fintech, there are a lot of really impressive examples. There's TransferWise now, Wise, obviously in London, and I think Revolut is going to be like a really important company in the years to come.
So we're bringing founders over to the Bay Area. How do you think European talent is often underrated by US investors? So we have
funny accents.
We do have funny accents and don't know the difference between Celsius and Fahrenheit. But beyond getting our sort of measurements right, what should how should an American investor that is evaluating a European team, any thoughts on what they might look out for so that they don't underrate them?
Interesting. I mean, going through the data points, trying to extract the commonalities here. Well, within kind of software tech, because I think 40% of the companies today are biotech, and even though ARC works in biology, I certainly don't pretend to be an expert in biotech. Within software tech, I think you can kind of divide the European companies into two categories. There's one category where the main advantage they see in Europe is that it's less competitive. And so they can be like, the X of Europe, where X something that works really well elsewhere, and they're just going to try to do it in Europe, and they're, going to adapt it a bit more effectively to Europe than the X itself. But kind of fundamentally, there's a vibe of we're going to be the second-rate one. And so I think X for Europe has always, or for any given country in Europe, has never had a great resonance to it. But then there's a category of company that looks at the advantage of Europe as a cost structure advantage, where it's, well, we're just going to be the global winner, and we're going to crush those inferior American pretenders to the crown, because they have to pay Silicon Valley wages, and people in Silicon Valley only want to work from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. With an hour for lunch and an hour to walk the dog, whereas our people in Tallinn are cranking till 11 p.m. And there's many companies that sort of fit in the second category, and really do have these kind of global aspirations, and don't look at themselves as merely the sort of administering some second-rate version for the European continent, and that second category, a bunch of the companies I just mentioned certainly fall into, and I'm really bullish on them.
Just on this theme, when you came to Silicon Valley for the first time, when you came to the Bay Area, what did you have to change about yourself? Or even, I suppose, after a while, what had you noticed had changed about yourself?
I'm the worst person to ask about that.
What would your mum say? Can we dial her in? It's probably a bit late now, isn't it?
I think it is important to have exposure to Silicon Valley. If you're in the software space, and even I think there's benefit in the if you're not in the software space, Ireland just got a new prime minister, and John and I were recently chatting about how we're going to try to entice him out here to Silicon Valley because we think it would be valuable for him to sort of get some exposure here. And I mean, I guess this is the last room I need to kind of persuade of that fact. You're all here, so I'll just shut up. But for me, I suppose the rapidity with which things happen, and then maybe. I think an underrated benefit of Silicon Valley, and something I now notice the absence of in a lot of other ecosystems, is the degree of good behavior. Sometimes we talk about investors or companies or people or whatever that behave badly in Silicon Valley, but I think those instances are kind of noteworthy precisely by virtue of their rarity. I think in general, Silicon Valley is an extremely high-trust place. And I think things move so quickly, in part because it's so high trust. You don't need to wait to paper everything before you proceed. And so many other, Stripe now does business in 60-odd countries or so, and in so many other places, you have to have such a defensive posture, and people are so either zero-sum oriented or kind of pessimistically oriented about all the different ways in which things could go wrong. And I find in Silicon Valley, consistently, you can, the orientation is just much more kind of what if it works than what if it fails. And I think that's very fundamental, and that's part of the reason I think people who aren't in tech should still spend some time here. I think the underlying kind of spiritual orientation is quite different, and at the root of a lot of why things work. Any of you drink Pliny the Elder, the beer? One person here? It's a very good IPA. Last night, I was just curious, where it. Someone mentioned they really like it, and it's kind of viewed as one of the best IPAs. And I was just curious. I'm always curious, like, what's the origin story behind something like that? Like, who wakes up one morning to invent a beer? And turns out Pliny the Elder, this great IPA, was invented invented just north of San Francisco by a guy in his house just north of here, and then was first demoed at a demo day in Hayward back around 2001. But I think it's kind of an interesting story because there are obviously many things in Silicon Valley where Silicon Valley was a pioneer that are not just software. Like Silicon Valley is apparently an inventor in beer technology. And so anyway, I think that shows that whatever's going on here is, it's somehow deeper. It's more about the mindset than it's just like there's more angel investors here or something.
Does the founder of the beer company have any link to Pompeii?
No, he said he wanted something that sounded grand. Which I guess he succeeded in.
Great, and has volcanic bubbles or something in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Well, I suppose this point of what if it works rather than what if it fails. You've talked in the past about micro pessimism and macro optimism, and this is something that we actually think about when we look at founders. Is you have to be really pessimistic about what they're doing today. You need to be working out how to push them to be the best version of themselves, but very optimistic of, okay, well, if they're this good now, how good could they be in 5 years' time? How do you apply your framework, if you like, in other parts of your life? Because I think when I've heard you talking about it in the past, it's usually been to the macroeconomic situation or long-term progress at Stripe. How do you use this framework?
John, my co-founder, just did an interview with this the Irish newspaper, and in it he just described how he's permanently paranoid and worried about complacency. And then he said in the interview, it's a very healthy attitude. And I like how he felt the need to suffix it with the adamant insistence that it's definitely a healthy attitude, because it certainly sounds healthy. But I don't know. I think probably the attitude that is optimal for sort of running a company is it's probably not best for just making you a well-adjusted, happy, normal person. I wish someone had told me. Like, it's funny. I don't think this has really been written about, or at least I haven't seen it, sort of with respect to companies, where you really do need to have this sort of contradictory superposition of mental states. Like, you really do feel a bit sort of schizophrenic, because on the one hand, you really do, as you point out, you have to be sort of the most attuned to all the ways in which things can go wrong and all the ways in which you're today screwing up and all the deficiencies and the problems and worried about the people who are going to quit and the people who aren't going to join and the customers who are going to churn, and just like, you have to be incredibly imaginative about all the things that can go wrong. And like, if you're not that, then you won't have the anticipatory foresight to correct them, and then they will in fact happen. Like, you need to be kind of imaginative about them precisely so that you can ward them off and have them not happen. And then, yes, simultaneously, you need to have this kind of deep-rooted inner conviction that it'll all be fine, and like things in 3 years are going to be amazing. And I was literally in a meeting with some leaders at Stripe earlier today where we were talking about. Just before I went to bed last night, I came across this like egregiously bad thing that was happening, and we met this morning to discuss it, and we were like all in strong accordance that this thing is like egregiously bad, and here are all the forceful corrective steps they're going to have to take to cause it to not happening. And and then we had discussed our plans for 25, and we all agreed that by the middle to end of 2025, things would be awesome. And but I really did believe both of those things.
Yeah.
I think the thing that was happening last night was really terrible, and I think they'll be in a great spot in 9 months. But it is this, it's a contradictory superposition, it took me a few years to realize that that's normal.
One of the ways that I think about this, we spend some of our time, some of the people that come to EF, it's obvious that they want to be a founder. Others, we're taking them on a journey, helping them realize that this is the path to go down. And I often say to them, the way that I think about it is that as a founder, you're going to be micro unhappy compared to your peers, and you're going to be macro happy or macro content compared to your peers. And so the role as a founder, or the life of a founder, is that your day-to-day is probably going to suck quite badly. Your peers are probably going to the gym and having a social life and have healthy sleep patterns or whatever it may be, and so they're sort of micro content, but often macro deeply unhappy about the trajectory they're on. And I feel like as a founder, you get to choose what you're working on. That gives you a degree of macro happiness that I don't know if you can get elsewhere.
I don't know. I think you're micro unhappy and macro unhappy, but maybe macro fulfilled.
Content.
Yeah. I was talking to Silvana, my wife, again recently, and I was talking about ARC, and I asked her if, objectively, I think ARC has gone super well. They published 2 really big discoveries earlier this year, which happened much faster than either of us thought would happen. The world's largest DNA foundation model, and kind of a new form of CRISPR, really cool stuff. And so I was asking her in the car, if you knew what you knew now about the difficulties and the challenges involved, would you have started ARC? And she didn't hesitate. She was like, absolutely not. And Jensen recently, Jensen from NVIDIA said in some interview, again, similarly, you can't be much more successful than Jensen. And of course, him also saying that, if he knew what he knew now, definitely not start NVIDIA. Which, maybe we should just all think about that. But back in the Silvana case, I think she is, and certainly, as I reflect on Stripe, I'm very, while maybe I wouldn't have done it if I'd known, I think you can be fulfilled that you did do it. She, my next question to her was, and do you regret doing it? And of course, her answer to that was also immediate and definitive, and absolutely not. She's really glad she did do it. So I think again, it's back to this contradiction of you wouldn't do it if you knew how hard it was, but you're really glad you did do it. And I don't know. Freud supposedly said that the Irish are impervious to psychoanalysis, and so I just try to not think about these things very hard.
Fair enough. One final question for you. You are a voracious reader and have put out great lists of books you've read. What is the one book that everyone should go away and read that they probably haven't heard of? Well, I just read. I'm currently reading, if anyone's enjoying the book club, I was reading this morning, Madame Bovary, which I've never read before, but I don't know yet whether it'll have relevance to startups, the Alchemy of Air by Thomas Haber, I think. No, Thomas begins with H. Hegel? Anyway, whatever. Alchemy of Air. It is about the Haber-Bosch process. So you guys have all heard of the Haber-Bosch process. How we make a nitrogen fertilizer. We were headed for this Malthusian collapse around the turn of the 20th century because we were getting our nitrogen fertilizer from literally from bird excrement on an island off the west coast of South America. That's what was sustaining European agriculture. And there were limited exports. And so it's sort of a question of, well, how are we going to keep this whole party going? And so, these 2 Germans, Haber and Bosch, they invented the Haber-Bosch process to synthesize nitrogen fertilizer from the nitrogen in the atmosphere. But it was nobody thought it would work. It required not just one discovery, but a whole sequence of engineering challenges to be solved.
and just like completely change the world. Like last I checked these numbers, around 1% of global energy use now goes just to producing nitrogen fertilizer via the Haber-Bosch process. And so anyway, alchemy of air is how the whole thing happened. So yeah,
well, and this is a great setup because we have a company working on this exact problem, nitrogen use. Who will be
so Fritz and Haber are now obsolete.
Yeah, unfortunately. Patrick, thank you so much for joining this afternoon.
All right, thanks for having me.
Okay, right, we are going to get started with the pitches. Before then, I just wanted to give you a brief reminder of what you're going to see this afternoon. So as Patrick and I were saying, EF isn't a normal accelerator. The companies that you see today were built on EF. So the founders that you see today originally joined EF as individuals back in April. These founders actually were part of our European programs, so they're from our London and Paris cohorts. And they started in April, joining us with early ideas about what they might want to work on. 3 months later, having experimented with different co-founders, they come to our investment committee, and we take the top half of companies that are produced. We incorporate them in the US now, bring them over here for fundraising, and a big thank you to some of our European VC friends who have come out today to join us as well. The companies are incorporated here, they're building their customer base here, and as Patrick was saying, many of them are looking to make use of that price arbitrage, accessing talent both in Europe and in the US. Today marks the start of their fundraising process. Some of them will have raised a couple of angel tickets already, but this is the start of them being unleashed on the VC ecosystem. Last time, rounds moved very quickly, with rounds being filled up within a matter of days. So if there are companies you like and want to get more information on, please do take time after the pitches to meet them. We'll have various tables set up in the venue. But with that, I think we should probably get started. We're going to kick off with a company called AMT. Now, one of the things we love at EF are intersections. You think, many of the most interesting companies are intersections of interesting ideas. And sometimes you get those interesting intersections within one person. Tom, our CEO, who's going to pitch now, he is both an award-winning theoretical physicist and obsessed with marketing. Let's welcome Tom onto the stage.
One of our customers was going to hire 25 more marketers. Instead, they hired our software. I'm Tom, CEO of AMT, and we're building an AI employee for partnering with 1,000 times more influencers. Since founding 3 months ago, we've signed contracts worth over $450,000 in annualized revenue. And our customers love us because influencer marketing is the best performing channel for consumer brands. But partnering with influencers is a nightmare. It's like herding cats where every cat is the next Kim Kardashian. For every dollar spent on influencer marketing today, over 50 cents goes directly to salaries of an army of salespeople needed to build relationships with these influencers. And that's why we built our AI employee. It does all the work of these salespeople. And AMT is already managing thousands of influencer relationships right now. I'm an award-winning theoretical physicist and machine learning researcher. I've built AI products for tens of millions of people. And for the last 4 years, I've run marketing teams at startups like Ren. My co-founder, Christian, is the best engineer I have ever met. He single-handedly architected and built the ad tech infrastructure at Permutive, which serves impressions to over 2.5 billion daily active users. Those 25 marketers that we automated are just the beginning. 860,000 new marketing jobs are listed each year in the US alone. We're building an autonomous marketing team. People say that someday AI will do 99% of the work that marketers do today. That future is already here. AMT is building it right now. Thank you.
So one of the themes of the founders you're going to see today is that many of them were referred by our alumni as people that they thought would be fantastic for EF's program. Anushka, our next CEO of Genie, actually got referred to us because she was working at an EF portfolio company. She was working in one of the biggest communities on reproductive health in Europe. And that gives you a hint about what she might be about to talk about. Let's welcome Anushka.
When you think of a pregnancy, we immediately think of the womb, the warm home of a baby for 9 months. But in fertility, the womb is completely ignored. Did you know the womb accounts for a quarter of infertility? So why are clinicians ignoring it? Well, that's because it's only accessible via a painful and inaccurate biopsy, which of course no woman wants to do. But womb health is actionable, and addressing it will improve fertility by 50%. And that's why we're building Genie, the world's first non-invasive diagnostic of the womb, for the 320 million women struggling with infertility. Our diagnostic uses menstrual blood, which is actually the shedding of the lining of the womb. We then give you a score based on your hormone and biomarker expressions and interactions, and for the first time in the world, access heavy metals and uterine infections. We then prescribe you medication to fix it. This tech will halve the cost of IVF and revolutionize everything we know about fertility testing. In just a few weeks, we've already gotten into the lab and discovered 15 biomarkers in patients and developed first-of-its-kind processing protocol, supercharging our launch to the end of next year. We also filed our first patent this week and have advisors on board from Harvard Medical School and Weill Cornell. We also have 2 insurance companies on board. But that is just the start. Our data set will unlock the first real understanding of the womb, opening up pathways in gynecological cancers and new birth control, a $60 billion opportunity. I'm Anushka, the CEO. After studying genetics at Cambridge University, I've spent the last 6 years scaling at-home diagnostics, including fertility tests, to 100 million revenues. Genie might be putting them out of business. My co-founder, Andreas, is a rare combination of wet lab and computational expertise. And during his PhD, developed at-home point-of-care diagnostics. It is his brilliance that has meant that we have been able to supercharge our scientific pipeline. So join us in creating a world where women have data, less pain, and of course, a stellar womb health score.
Now, our next founder is a second-time founder. His first company he raised millions of dollars for when he was just 19. He joined EF because he knew that it was the best place for him to find his co-founder. Please welcome Theo to the stage.
Nitrogen is the most important fertilizer, but half of the nitrogen fertilizers applied in the fields are not actually absorbed by crops. This costs farmers $83 billion per year and emits more than the aviation and shipping sectors combined. The reason why those fertilizers are not fully absorbed by crops is that inside a plant, there is a protein that limits their uptake. At Thalya, we are building an RNAi spray to eliminate that protein, turning waste into yields. We are the first company to use RNAi amplification, a game-changing tech that reduces the amount of spray needed and extends its duration, allowing for a 90% margin. In just 1 week of testing, we've already achieved incredible results, doubling the root expansion and nitrogen uptake capabilities. We've selected corn as our first crop and have already signed 4 contracts for field trials in the top producing states. We are on track for widespread distribution by 2027, with a potential of $18 million in annual revenue only through our farmers network. My co-founder Hayat has a PhD and 2 postdocs in RNAi technology. She's one of the few scientists in the world capable of mastering RNAi amplification. As for me, I come from a farming family and started my first climate tech company at the age of 19. I raised $4 million from top investors, including YC. Together with Hayat, we are building the agro-input company of the 21st century, making farming both sustainable and highly profitable.
So Gus, our next CEO, my co-founder Matt, met 6 years ago at Oxford and has maintained a relationship with him ever since. Gus at the time was founding his first company at Oxford, which I think was a tutoring company, right? He then went on to be a lawyer, which gives you a hint about what WilsonAI might be working on. Let's welcome Gus and Alex to the stage.
The world needs more lawyers. It's not something you hear every day, but I've seen it. When I was an in-house lawyer, we were always drowning in basic legal requests. They took over 50% of our time. I saw business teams pulling out their hair because legal was slowing down revenue. But hiring just one more lawyer costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's why we're building Wilson, our AI paralegal. In just 2 months, 8 legal teams are using Wilson, and our user numbers have grown 30% week on week. Those pilots are set to convert to $75,000 of revenue, and we're under NDA for another $500,000.
Our secret is focusing on the interface between commercial and legal. We build for the whole business, not just lawyers. To start a legal query, commercial users chat to Wilson. Wilson solves simple matters instantly. But if it's complex, escalates to lawyers who join the chat and resolve the matter. This slashes legal response times from days to seconds and supercharges sales momentum. $43 billion is spent on in-house lawyers every year. And as Wilson improves, we will even capture the $375 billion spent on legal services.
I'm Gus. I studied engineering at Oxford before becoming a lawyer at Clifford Chance, Europe's most prestigious law firm, and working in 3 in-house legal teams.
I'm Alex. I'm a Cambridge CS and maths grad with background as a quant trader and researcher, working at the world's top hedge funds, including D.E. Shaw. The race is on to transform legal, and Wilson will win.
So at EF, we build co-founding teams, and we always get really excited when 2 people come together who would never have otherwise met. Our next team is a great example of this. Morgan was previously building a neobank in Belgium. and Hamza was building payments infrastructure in Africa. Let's welcome Loro.
Meet Cissé, our first customer. He is the business owner of a construction material company in Dakar, in Senegal. Like millions of SMBs in Africa, his business relies on importing goods from abroad. But he faces a massive challenge, paying his overseas suppliers. His bank today takes up to 4 weeks and charges up to 10% to make a cross-border payment. In the meantime, his shipment is blocked and his business is put at risk. But he's not alone. There is a $250 billion market of African importers just like Cissé, who are completely underserved. Since launching our MVP, business owners like him can now make payments abroad in less than 24 hours, 3 times cheaper. And in just 3 months since we launched, we saw demand completely explode. We went from $200,000 of volume in July to $4 million in September. Annualized, we're talking about $2 million in revenue. But this is just the beginning. We are building the first ever instant cross-border payment platform for African businesses. I was working at TapTapSend, a $2 billion remittance company. There, I launched 8 African countries, scaled them to more than $20 million in volume a month, and built foreign exchange infrastructures in each one of them. As for my co-founder, Morgan, he's launching a company for a second time. He previously launched a digital bank in Europe from scratch, led the product team, and created its core banking infrastructure. Mansour is our first employee and our head of sales in Senegal. Together, we are building Luo, and our mission is to empower global trade for African businesses, one transaction at a time.
So we work with a lot of founders who have deeply technical backgrounds, but I always think some of the most exciting founders who are deeply technical and also have a diverse set of talents. And this is true of our next team, where they bring together hardware experience, software experience, arts, science, business. Please welcome Ula.
Hormones regulate almost everything in your body. Every single one of you has spent time and money trying to solve a problem that was caused by your hormones. Today, it's pretty much impossible to track hormones. You have to physically go to a lab for someone to take a blood draw. It's insane. It's not only invasive, it's disruptive, and only a single data point. Until now. Now, I can wear this, a DNA-based sensor that tracks my hormones wherever I am. To give you a bit of a perspective, continuous glucose monitors truly revolutionize diabetes care. The company that makes CGMs makes $4 billion revenue. That's just from glucose. And we're addressing markets much bigger than that. Starting with IVF and low testosterone, where clinics know the pain. They're lining up to work with us, and in just 3 months, we've secured 3 million LOIs from some of the leading clinics, and that's going to convert to 8 million ARR out the gate. Leading names in fertility from Harvard, Mount Sinai, and HIMSS have joined our team. My name is Zula, and I had a wearable device company at 16 and led multiple enterprises at Palantir. My co-founder, Irene, developed medical devices at Philips and invented electrochemical sensors. Our science team has more than 20 years of experience in DNA-based sensing and nanotechnology. All of our experience combined has enabled us to move so fast, and I'm really proud to say just last week, we passed another breakthrough. Our sensor works in human clinical ranges already. I want you to take away is this: Level 0 is truly leading the race, and we're positioned to win this market. Thank you.
So the job of the EF talent investors, our team, is to go out and embed themselves in the best talent communities in the world. Now, one of our London-based talent investors has been building up his network of biotech individuals at the University of Oxford. And I remember, many months ago now, he was saying to me, I've met this incredible woman. She seems to have won every prize possible at Oxford. We have to get her. Here she is. Let's welcome Jenny.
What if I told you that drug efficacy is all about the gut? While human genomes are 99.9% identical, our gut microbiomes are up to 90% different. The same cancer drug shrinks tumors twice as effectively depending on your gut. But pharma has been designing drugs in the dark. They have no idea how their drugs interact with your gut. At Nook Bio, we uncover this information. We're building the world's first foundation model of gut microbiome and drug interactions, helping pharma design and deliver drugs with maximum efficacy. I'm Jenny. I have a PhD in clinical AI from the University of Oxford. I've witnessed these problems firsthand working at an AI for drug discovery company. My co-founder, David, is a researcher from Harvard Medical School, specializing in drug metabolism and the gut. Generating this type of data is extremely complex. We've established 5 exclusive partnerships with leading institutes and hospitals across the Bay Area and globally. And we're moving extremely fast. Within a month, we've already started generating valuable data that's proprietary to us, and we're on schedule to launch with customers in early 2025. And this goes beyond just cancer therapeutics. There are over 250 million prescribed drugs in the US that have known gut microbiome interactions. That's millions of patients whose treatment is being held back by their gut. Nook will change this. Understanding human genomics changed the course of drug discovery in the past 30 years. At Nook Bio, we believe that finally decoding the gut is the key to changing this for the next century. Thank you.
Next up, we have Iris Labs. Now, I think one of the great things about working in venture is that you get to spend a lot of time with people who are talking about the future. It's always magical when you meet people who are building the future and building what feels like science fiction. Let's welcome Nicola to the stage.
Picture this. It's 2035. And mobile robots are as common as smartphones. Drones fly autonomously above our heads. Industrial robots work tirelessly on assembly lines. Today, however, the one thing that is preventing this revolution is their power source. Batteries run out too fast, recharge too slowly, and add huge extra costs for their users. But here is the exciting part. The solution isn't in improving batteries. It's about completely reinventing how robots are powered. What if you could provide robots with unlimited energy wirelessly? At Iris Lab, we are doing just that. And here is our first prototype. We are using lasers as emitters and photovoltaic cells as receivers. And the best part is we make it 100 times cheaper than our competitors, with the most efficient and the cheapest photovoltaic cell ever. This is a $105 billion opportunity, and we are seizing it. We partnered with 6 leading drone manufacturers to ship our first product within a year. My name is Nicolas. I'm an aerospace engineer. I worked on lunar rovers, on reusable rockets, for the European Space Agency. Lakshman, our CTO, holds a PhD in physics, and he's one of the few experts on high-power photovoltaics. And Bastien, our COO, he is an ex-defense AI robotics engineer. Robots need the right power infrastructure to thrive. We are providing it with cheap, seamless, and unlimited laser power. Join us at Iris Lab to power 10 billion robots wirelessly. Thank you.
One of the things that I hear often talking to people in the Bay Area is, where are we in the AI hype cycle? Are we at the top? What's about to happen? Well, I think one place we can say for sure we still haven't seen enough movement is in AI for consumer. We've got 2 AI for consumer or AI consumer companies pitching today. And let's welcome Thalya to talk about Vibe.
AI will cure loneliness, but it won't be with virtual girlfriends and AI companions. AI will become the facilitator of human-to-human connection, not the replacement. It will augment our social interactions to stimulate deeper human bonds. This is the future we're building at Vibe, and we've already started. We've been testing a playful AI for daily reflection with your friends. It asks you and your friends one thought-provoking question every day and uses generative prompts to inspire meaningful conversation in your group chats. And we're seeing insane engagement and retention metrics with our beta testers. 30-day retention for users in the Vibe group is 84%. Our users are loving the Vibe AI so much that they've ditched their old group chats and made Vibe chats the default place to talk with their friends. I'm Thalya. I studied AI at Stanford. I first joined Facebook when I was 19 and later became the youngest product lead at Spotify, where I managed a team of 25 to launch audiobooks and bring in 1 million new subscribers a year. My co-founder is Thomas. He's a brilliant AI engineer that spent the last 6 years at conversational AI startups. He was deploying Gen AI models way before ChatGPT even launched. We believe that social AI will become the glue that holds us together, actively guiding us to deeper human connection. Thank you.
So Simona, our next CEO, I actually interviewed when we were considering whether we would offer her a place on the program. And sometimes I've interviewed a lot of people to join EF, and sometimes you really, really remember them. Simona is one of those people. I was struck by her intensity and the enormity of her ambition. Please welcome Simona to the stage.
The biggest cost in cancer isn't drugs. It's the cost of human decision-making. There are 10 drugs I could give a pancreatic cancer patient, but thousands of different treatment courses that could be right for them. What's the right drug? What's the right dose? What's the schedule? When do you switch treatment? Even the top GI oncologists in the world couldn't possibly get all of that right. That's why they've joined our advisory committee. At Radical, we're targeting the $90 billion spend on human cancer doctors. Our foundational models to personalize care are trained on over 7 million patient records. We've accessed the most valuable multimodal oncology dataset in the world, and we're the only ones to ever touch it. Just to tell you how major that is, other multimodal models are trained on only 1,000 patients, And we have deployment lined up for the top hospital here in the Bay Area. But we know, for this to be successful, clinician trust is everything. Doctors trust doctors over foundational models. That's why our first version is a search layer, which allows them to compare their current patient to the previous patients that have come before. This was previously impossible, since medical records aren't searchable. But recently, language models became good enough to tackle the 146 million clinical notes Radical has. I'm Simona. I started 2 startups at university, one in personalized medicine for oncology. I was the #1 graduate at the top university in Scotland, where I studied mathematics, and I'm a 2-time national champion in tennis. My co-founder, Gediminas, has his PhD from Oxford in biological physics and was a lecturer there at the age of 22. Together, we're creating a world where every single clinical decision is made through us, targeting the biggest economic spend in healthcare, which is human clinical decision-making.
So the next team, each founder was actually referred to us by different EF alum with the message that we had to take them on the program. And we did. Let's welcome the team.
In a medical lab in New York, a microbiologist is starting another midnight shift, racing against time to deliver critical PCR results by morning before it's too late. This scenario happens every day, as PCR testing is slow, limiting the testing capacity of labs and hence the revenue. At Nplicon, we've engineered an automated PCR machine that delivers results in under 10 minutes instead of hours. Powered by microfluidics technology, our prototype is 10 times faster compared to the best PCR machines on the market. This is game-changing, yet speed is only the beginning. Our technology uses 100 times fewer consumables, an innovation that could save labs up to 70% of the $28 billion they spend annually on PCR consumables. To put this to action, we've partnered up with one of the nation's top PCR facilities in the US, and we will be deploying our solution in only 2 years from now. Leading this breakthrough innovation is Isma, our CTO. He has a PhD in microbiology from one of the best labs in the world developing microfluidics and PCRs. And myself, Hashim, the CEO, I have a PhD in mechanical engineering, and I've been a CTO for a hardware startup developing products from concept up to the market. At Nplicon, we're not just building faster PCR machines, we're setting a new standard in molecular testing. Thank you.
So the next product I have become an avid user of. It's rather addictive, but it's probably not going to be great for my bank balance. Let's welcome Mark to the stage.
Hi, I'm Mark, CEO of Kiyo. And I arrived at Entrepreneur First in Paris, fresh out of graduate school from Harvard, and dressed like I just came from campus, wearing Birkenstocks, jeans, and a t-shirt. To my surprise, I was greeted with facial expressions that bordered on disgust. Someone actually said to me, "Why can we see your toes?" Now, as an American not named Emily in Paris, I knew I needed some help. So I hired a personal stylist. Meet Sonika. Sonika understood me quickly and styled me in a way that made me feel confident in Paris. This was, of course, eye-opening for me. And I knew I could productize it with AI so that everyone else could experience this too. That's why we created Kiyo, an AI personal stylist that learns what styles actually work for you. Kiyo learns 100 times faster than Sonica ever could and handpicks new fashion that you'll love to shop every day. New users onboard by sharing their fashion Pinterest boards, which Kiyo then transforms into a beautifully written summary of your aesthetic. This is then used as a guide to filter the internet to find you fashion that you'll love. From working with early users, we found that this builds trust because people feel seen. They also just love it. After launching 3 weeks ago, we're working with a core group of alpha users. 75% of them say this description of their style is perfect, and 84% of them save multiple items they intend to buy on day one. Now, what we're doing is groundbreaking, and we know that this early traction means that we can redesign online fashion shopping for consumers with AI. And our team is uniquely positioned to do this. From being a psychology researcher at Columbia University to joining the applied product team at DeepMind, I've dedicated my career to harnessing AI to augment human decision-making. My co-founder, Baptiste, he's a 10x data scientist who brings unparalleled fashion expertise in personalization from working with multiple consumer giants at BCG in Paris. At Kiyo, we're not just changing what you wear, we're changing how you see yourself. Because in a world of infinite choices, the most powerful one is knowing exactly who you are. Thank you.
We're all becoming more interested in what's in our food, what's in our clothes, what's in our cosmetics. And I remember doing the investment committee for Jessie and Pitri, our next founder, and being so inspired by what she's working on. Let's welcome Jessie to the stage.
Color is everywhere. It's in the food you eat, the clothes you're wearing, the seat you're sitting on, and even the pen and book in your hands right now. But there's a hidden danger here. These colors are synthetic, derived from petrochemicals, and they're wreaking havoc on our bodies and our environment. Consumers and regulators are demanding change, but brands are trapped, unable to find natural alternatives that are as high-performing as these toxic synthetics. Until now. At Pitri, we've unlocked nature's secret weapon, fungi. Non-toxic, sustainable, and every bit as high-performing as synthetics. And we're starting with the beauty industry, where $21 billion is spent on colorants every year. Brands and manufacturers are desperate for our solution. I'm Jessie, the founder of Pitri. As a biochemist and sustainable materials designer, changing the world through color is what I was made to do. I'm joined by a team of world-leading experts in mycology, green chemistry, beauty manufacturing, and colorant regulation. We are already validating our initial patent-pending collections and scaling up production so that we can get our revolutionary colorants in the hands of consumers fast. Because we know that the future of color isn't synthetic, it's fungal. The future is Pitri.
So Ashita, who is about to come on stage, I actually got a phone call from one of our growth stage alum who said one of the early employees of Clio wants to leave to become a founder, I want to back her, but I think she should do EF. And thank goodness for us, she did. Welcome, Ashita.
Big tech companies know you, all of us, better than our moms. We spent the last decades clicking, liking, and buying on Google, Amazon, and TikTok. But it was impossible for other companies to access this data until March this year. Fabric is the first company in the world to package search and social data as an API. This data is so valuable that in just 3 months, our first customer, a fashion retailer, has agreed to pay us $250,000 annually. Thanks to Fabric, they can now improve recommendations and search for their 100 million annual visitors, directly increasing sales. And we have another $1 million in our pipeline. Our immediate opportunity is in fashion e-commerce, a $1.2 trillion industry. But that is just the beginning. Fabric can provide user context to any B2C company now. Our tech is not domain specific. My co-founder, Massimo, is an incredible engineer. He has already built data infrastructure used by thousands of developers to create personalized applications. And I led product monetization at Kiyo. We increased LTV at Kiyo by 400% using open banking data. And this number would be multiples higher had we had access to Fabric. This is the open banking moment for search and social data, and we're making it accessible to every single B2C company in the world.
So as we've talked about, EF is one of the core parts of our product is helping people find their co-founder. Now, they have a 3-month period where they can test different co-founder relationships, but sometimes they just know, and our next team met on day 1 of the program and have worked together ever since. Let's welcome Ryan and Chris to the stage.
Covalent inhibitors are the most important untapped class of drugs today. They can stick to and shut off the 85% of proteins that cause cancer, but currently cannot be drugged. Already, their sales exceed $50 billion a year, and we've only just scratched the $250 billion cancer market. The problem is that while they are immensely powerful, covalent inhibitors are immensely difficult to design. I experienced this myself, discovering new drugs during my PhD. Best-in-class computational models like AlphaFold cannot solve this. At Axiom, we can. We're pioneering a computational platform that can discover new covalent inhibitors.
In 2 months, I've trained our own foundational model that serves as the basis of our platform, and it's born directly from my PhD. It's being deployed in pilot studies with committed academic labs and biotechs. Ryan and I are a rare wet lab meets dry lab duo straight out of the University of Cambridge Department of Chemistry. We have assembled the leading scientists in covalent drug discovery and machine learning from the universities of Oxford and Imperial. We have a stellar team of commercial advisors, including the former chair of the UK's National Health Service. Axiom will discover the next generation of covalent drugs in a fraction
of the time. It took 40 years to discover one for lung cancer. Axiom will do it in 4. Thank you.
So we're on to the final pitch. Our next founder, we can't work out whether he loves or hates ERP. He's been working in manufacturing since he was 15. So please welcome Phil to the stage.
This is the beast. Our customer Joe uses this arcane spreadsheet to run operations at an Indiana manufacturer. The beast caused the worst 2 years in company history. For the last 5 years, Joe has been trying to replace the beast with an ERP. But none of the existing solutions work for him. They all take 18 months to implement and 6 figures in consulting fees. Toolkit has already outcompeted dozens of established ERPs. We can sell manufacturers critical infrastructure because we take spreadsheets, like the beast, and we turn them into a custom ERP. And instead of taking 18 months to do this, we take minutes. We built our own ERP language that makes us the first company to treat customization as a core feature in ERPs. Toolkit is just 4 months old, and we've closed Joe for $40K a year. 3 more companies like him are lined up for another $120K. SMB manufacturing is our wedge into the $124 billion ERP market. I'm Phil. I'm the CEO. I've worked at Bay Area manufacturers since I was 15, and I was in the top 1% of EECS students at Stanford. I've lived the ERP nightmare when I built robots at Google X and satellites at Capella Space. My co-founder Michael co-created a $110 million early-stage fund. More unusually, he is obsessed with this problem. Michael's been building ERPs since he was 12 years old. Together, we're Toolkit, and we're here to tame the beast. Thank you.
Right, well, that is it. You've seen 16 incredible companies. I would encourage you to, if you do want to speak to any of them, take time today to hunt them out. Now, we are going to help you with that. If you look in your brochures on page, I actually can't remember what the page number is. If you look in your brochures, there is a map. And on that map, it will indicate where each of the founders are going to be. So they will be in clusters. It is going to take us about 10 minutes to get all the little tables set up for the founders. So in that time, please do grab an ice cream, grab a drink, chat to each other. But I encourage you to move fast. They went very quickly last time, so don't delay. Thank you so much for joining us today. Can we give the founders a huge round of applause?